trilogy made by the human resources, financial resources, and jobs, the job market. Any stakeholder working to address this issue regarding traditional education should highlight this trilogy and this balance between jobs, human resources, and financial resources. His Excellency has elaborated on the different elements of this trilogy. With no further ado, I'm going to give the floor to the different speakers. The speakers will underline all the elements and the environments of such a problematic in order to try to extract suggestions and proposals. The floor to Dr. Haji Ibrahim Jafar, President of the Supreme Council of Islamic Affairs in Ethiopia, President of the League of Ulemas, and Secretary General of the Council of Religion in Ethiopia. Alhamdulillah. Praise be the Lord. May God bless the scholars, peace be upon the Prophet, his family, and his companions. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, honorable ministers, Your Excellencies, ambassadors, dear guests, dear attendees, on my behalf and on behalf of the Muslims from Ethiopia, the sons of Barakat Abissini, is the origin country of Sidna Bilal, the first muezzin of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in Islam, from the land of truth. From the land of the king of Abyssinia. I send you my regards with the deepest regards from Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa ta'ala wa barakatuh. It's a great honor for me to be here with you to celebrate the 4th edition of the African Conference for Peace under the theme Traditional Education in Africa, Knowledge, Skills, and Peace. Those faces I see around me, scholars, scientists, religious leaders, I can only express my deepest gratitude to all the one involved in the organization of this wonderful conference here in the Islamic Republic of Mauritania. And to His Excellency Sheikh Ouna Abdul Ibn Baya. As all people who have joined to organize this conference, thank you very much. During this brief delivery, designed around scholars, scientists, and the need to address them in time of crisis, in time of turmoils, creating a lot of perplexity, a lot of discrepancy and disputes. This is when we need to refer to the community. A community which is led by the ulemas. Fellow citizens must listen the advice and the recommendations from scholars and scientists, because those crises and those turmoils are shaking societies, which create extra chaos and divisions and disputes within the Islamic nation. Scientists are wise enough to overcome such crisis, as it is quoted in the Holy Quran. Quote, "O God, ask the believers to always refer to the Prophet, his companions, and to the wise men from the society to overcome those crises shaking society." End of quote. Ibn Sa'di, peace be upon him, in many jurisprudence texts, do consider that it is necessary to delegate as much as possible the decisions that should be taken regarding everything related to the Ummah affairs, whether it's in moment of joy or in diversity, referring to scientists and scholars with a lot of humility, referring to the Prophet, to the wise, to the leaders, characterized by wisdom and lucidity, common sense in the decision-taking process to decide when it is needed. Thus, trying to overcome all the crises that could threaten the societies. This is something which is stated in different Quranic verses and in many surahs in the Holy Quran. It is always necessary to delegate the decision-taking process to people who deserve this trust, people with a lot of stamina, a lot of courage, and common sense, because they are the people who are much more likely to take the right decision and to preserve the highest interest of nation, and of course to avoid to divulgate statements, informations we need to make sure first in time of crisis it is utterly important to rely on the fiqh of interest and to address the priorities and to always refer to the Quranic text, to the hadith, because it is necessary to avoid what is going to feed the fire of fitna, to put fuel on fire of fitna, and to be patient, to show patience, and to contemplate the situation by taking into consideration all the different elements to understand the rules of fiqh and the maqasid of Sharia, by making sure to organize the right balance between the interest, taking into consideration the findings in their details. It's not anyone who can understand the universal stakes of those issues. Thus, the necessity to read and read again the Quranic text and to understand its full magnitude. It is then necessary to feed the soul, to read and to investigate and to research, to try to understand the full and comprehensive sense of those precepts, those principles, helping us to avoid to take the wrong decisions that could put in jeopardy the societies. This is something that can only be done by scientists and scholars. That's why it is necessary to take into consideration this point and to show humility by delegating the decision-taking process to the right profile. In this regard, please bear in mind the story of Moses with Fitna.
Moses.
We should take into consideration the history of Moses by trying to do as few harm as possible. And by the way, please refer to Surat Al-Kafir in order to understand the lessons of wisdom, like the story of Moses with Sidna Isa. It is so very important to draw the lessons that this story and the dialogue, the very controversial dialogue between Moses and Al-Khabir, from which we learned many lessons. The reform can only be organized by people with a lot of skills and knowledge. I mean, scientists and scholars. People who can work for good and eradicate evil can only be people fully understanding the Quranic text and people abiding by their Muslim duties. This can only be done by people conducting the prayers 5 times per day and fasting. This is something which is much deeper. It's about erudition and about wisdom, following many readings as the one dedicated to scholars and scientists. It is then necessary to delegate this decision-taking process to scholars and scientists from the Ummah. Especially that the latest have enough stamina to influence the public opinion and to enlighten the public opinion with their great wisdom. Otherwise, it could lead to a high level of corruption that would put in jeopardy the stability of society. In such cases, we might face many discrepancies and disputes that will endanger and jeopardize the unity of the national nation, of the Muslim nation. That's why we need to refer to those scientists and scholars. It is then utterly important to show a lot of compassion, a lot of wisdom when we are talking about public affairs and the public environment by always opting for mediation, peace, that should be delegated to scholars. And indeed to avoid to compromise the unity of the Islam nation and to avoid to serve some wrong and painful agenda. I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry for interfering, but I would like to remind you that we are running short of time and I need to invite you to wrap up your statement. We have different interventions this afternoon, so please wrap up your delivery. I still have many things to say, but let me wrap up my statement. Once again, I would like to express my gratitude to the Islamic Republic of Mauritania and His Excellency Sheikh Abdullah Ben Baya, and to express my gratitude to everyone involved in this peace conference for Africa on behalf of the Nation of Islam. God bless you. God bless you. Peace and prayers be upon the Prophet, his family, and his companions.
سماحة الشيخ يجي إبراهيم توفى.
Thank you very much. Dear Haji Ibrahim Tofa, President of the High Council of Islamic Affairs of Ethiopia, I would like to commend you for your intervention. And I'm so sorry to have interrupted you. We would have liked to listen more from you, of course. I'm now going to give the floor to the representative of the Tijani School, Ahmed Boubacar. The floor is yours, sir. We do not have much time, unfortunately. So I would like to kindly ask you to respect the time that has been imparted to you, that is exactly 10 minutes. No more. because we want to hear from all speakers. Thank you very much for your understanding. Thank you, dear Chair. On behalf of God Almighty, the graceful and the merciful, may the peace be on his prophet. We pray to God who created all human beings and creatures. And we praise God who gave reason to humans. The Lord has provided men with wisdom, and he addressed his prophet saying that he would cast down a book on his prophet. So, as you can see, God gave us many things. Dear Sheikh Ben Baya, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to everyone, and thanks for your attention. I would first, of course, like to thank the organizers of the conference for this kind invitation to take part to your exchanges in this very important international and African conference for peace. And I must commend you for the excellent selection of the topic of the year, namely how to reconcile peace and wisdom. Because these are two extremely important things in the life of any human being. It is the best way to forge a culture of peace and to counteract any advances of violent extremism. I would therefore like to tell you more about wisdom and peace. Throughout our school, our Maliki Sufi school is a special kind of school. We give a great importance to two dimensions, which are knowledge and good behaviors. It is very important to understand the importance of your behavior within a non-Arabic speaking society. Our Sheikh created lots of mahadir, lots of schools, and they directly collaborated with his own school. Within these centers, there were lots of disciplines to be taught. Therefore, the Sheikh went to find Quranic teachers from Mauritania, and he insisted on the fact that the very first learning should be the Quran. So he asked the Muslims to send their children to attend Quranic school, and so they could learn the Quran in the first place. This is something that has enabled this society to praise good knowledge and good behavior. Our Sheikh further wrote a book about the importance of science in the three chapters of this book. He told about the importance of the knowledge and the dangers of ignorance. He explained how important it was to broadcast knowledge. This school is a perfect realm for the development of thinking and education. This school aims to educate children so that they will always be in the search for peace. For what regards women, many women have been taught at the school of the Sheikh, Mrs. Sheikha Marianne, Mrs. Khadija Abdullah Iwan, amongst others, we have mentioned them. Mrs. Amul Khair in Niger. Our Sheikh used to give the same importance to the education of young girls, and he always used to say that your daughters should be considered just like your sons. And for our Sheikh, he never made any distinctions between children, whether girls or boys, and he would always ask girls to attend class and to follow their studies. This is why the school of Sheikh Ibrahim is well known for its diversity of nationalities, and this school has provided graduates who are nowadays scattered around the world, and it's a very well-known spiritual school that has provided spiritual education to lots of students and played a tremendous role as to the fight against obscurantist and radical mindsets. Upon reading of Sheikh Ibrahim's biography, if you read his speeches and his papers, you will get a clear idea as to the very conception he had of the notion of peace. Upon reading of the biography of the students of this Sheikh, if you look at their own biographies, they also have played a vital role within their own societies. Of return, these are moderate people, intellectuals, who gain their rank amongst society and have deployed tremendous efforts in favor of tolerance and peace. No disciple of this Sheikh was ever recruited by a radical group. On the contrary, the Sheikh school was behaving as an oasis, welcoming the victims of violence. And I could mention the case of Nigeria, for example. The Sheikh is a fair person. He was against the lack of justice, and he's always asked his disciples to be fair and to be able to forgive to others. He also played the role of mediator in order to put a final stop to many conflicts, namely regional disputes. The Sheikh is a renowned figure who has followed the footsteps of the Prophet and his companions. For what regards arbitration, the search for peace or peaceful settlement, he always has abode by the Sharia. Now the speaker is quoting from the Quran. It's a verse telling about the importance of the application of the Quranic law. In 71, the Sheikh said before his disciples that it was very important to be able to forgive any person who has been unjust towards you. You must provide them, you must display generosity. You have to be able to forgive. This Sheikh has always targeted the youngest in order to instill these mindsets of benevolence and of learning the Quran throughout this perspective from the young age. He further struggled against any extremist ideas within his school. I could quote you many famous phrases from this sheikh, yet since I am about to schedule, I will have to conclude my presentation, and thank you, of course, for the organization of this beautiful encounter dealing with the promotion of peace. We all are to overcome a series of challenges that keep on paving our roads. This is why I would like to commend you for this initiative and wish you full success in your works. Thank you very much. Thank you, dear Sheikh Ahmed Bubakir. Yang, the representative of the Ibrahimi Atijari. And now I'm going to give the floor to Sheikh Caroline Duk, President of the League of the Sahel Ulamas and Vice President of the Faisal University. The floor is yours, sir. In the name of Allah, the most graceful and merciful, may the peace be upon his Prophet, his companions, and family. I would like to try, if you allow me, to deliver you a few points regarding traditional education in the framework of the nation state. And I have insisted now on the notion of the traditional educational system at odds with reality. Indeed, since yesterday we have been listening to many words, of course listening with a lot of attention, glorifying words for this kind of traditional education, which has raised the flag of Islam very high. Yet in my understanding, I find it wise to focus on our current realities. Namely, for the people who live in Sahel, it is very important for us to understand the final purpose of the efforts that we deploy within these institutions. I'm talking about the khalwas, Quranic circles, any Islam or traditional educational instruments. To this purpose, let me tell you about an experience that we undertook in Chad, and this has been now practically a quarter of a century that we have been realizing a threat was upon the country. And this threat is related to the results of the efforts of these khalawas and these Quranic schools. I will tell you about the Chadian experience regarding the Sharawa, and I'm going to try to give you a special focus throughout integrism and radicalism, and try to explain you how this is related to the modern academic system. Simply, I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, that the realities that we live today in all our societies, and namely on our African continent, is a proof that the young are now the most targeted segment for radicalism, terrorist movements, and extremist groups. Young people in Chad, of course, including students and other youth segments, are a direct target, and they are living in very difficult conditions nowadays, where they are becoming marginalized, both economically and socially, suffer from poverty and lack some opportunities to find a job, and sometimes live in very precarious conditions which lead them to be politically marginalized, and they work in social silos. All these elements put together are ingredients that turns into a bad recipe, because it is a very fair target for these extremist groups now. So this is why we have to try to understand how to counteract this targeting of these young people. That's why we need efficient and realistic solutions. We need to coordinate our efforts. Responsibilities do not only fall upon the shoulders of the family and society at large, but this is also a shared responsibility by the civil society, pedagogical institutions, but it's also the responsibility of the government and the state. So if you look at things throughout this prism, you will understand that the responsibility is shared. This is why one needs to struggle all together to cope with this wave of integrism. This is why the people in charge of religious affairs have elaborated an action plan in Chad in order to protect and to integrate a new momentum in these schools and try to immunize these schools against any threats of integrism or fanatism, radicalisms, because they were easy praise for group manipulation. And this higher council of religious affairs have now deployed a strategy to protect young people and counteract any radicalism efforts targeting these young people, and try to integrate these dimensions within traditional education. This in order to cope with these integrist threats. The strategy was in fact based upon the youth. We have elaborated a plan called the Strategy of the High Council for the Development and Rehabilitation of the Khalawiya, and for the integration of the young within society. And I'd like to highlight this point. Why? Because I think it's well worth sharing the experience that we've gained in Chad and demonstrate how these pedagogical institutions may contribute to the protection of young people and should therefore benefit from the rights that they should be granted. And this is something that goes around several pillars, the development and regulation of the Khalawi, but also the monitoring of the education provided in these Khalawas, as well as the training of trainers. Fourth, putting in place integration institutions and rehabilitation institutions to enable these young people to embrace society. We need to create educational institutions that are connected to Quranic teachings, but also can enable these young people to be integrated in the economic fabric of the country. These institutions should ensure well-studied orientation in order for these young people to be well-trained so as to find a job on the labor market and to be best adapted and trained to join society in an active manner, and that their needs are taken into consideration by the schools. Even their problems are to be understood in order to avoid any discrepancies between the expectations of these young people and what society needs. We also need some social incubators for the creation of new jobs and give them the feeling that they belong to a community and protect their dignity so that they can live in a private, in a fully proud manner in society. We also need to focus on the teaching of teachers and the pedagogical training. The educational model also has to be looked into the detail. We understand that the final purpose is to be able to integrate these people in society. The Higher Council of Religious and Islamic Affairs signed a protocol with the Ministry of Education for an insertion program, an integration program to prepare these students to be able to find a job on the labor market, because as we said, the bridge was to be established between pedagogical institutions and a society. This project has existed for a quarter of a century now, and now we have thousands of graduates from these schools who have been successfully integrating society because they've been granted positions in the public sector. Some people have become parliament members, deputies, and many others became very high officials in the ministry, so they can encompass high responsibility occupations nowadays. And these graduates now are extremely multifaceted and are working different governmental sectors. These are the fruits of our efforts. I further would like to mention that there are lots of successful experiences that we could tell you about. We need to replicate these good examples, and nowadays, of course, the purpose is to cope for any discrepancies, any loopholes that still remain, and some countries never have undergone these experiences, and I ask the Lord to help us in our endeavor. In order to summarize, I would like to tell you about a recommendation or a couple of recommendations so that these could be integrated within the general recommendations that will come as a final communication after this conference. There are 4 communications focusing on 4 parties, but the last recommendation shall be the one of interest for me. It is aimed at the governments of these countries, namely ministries of national education. These education ministries must be equipping these institutions so that they can create reintegration institutions after their initial training, so that they will build a bridge between traditional education and regular or academic education in order to offer more possibilities of integration within society. It is not only about promoting people, or having only wise men, but they become a burden to society because they only know about religious affairs. But it must be the responsibility of the government. It's up to the government to do their job and ensure that these people will find opportunities, and the belonging to these institutions should not turn them into people living in the margin of society. On the contrary. And I would like to share an example with you, if I may. In one of the countries where we were present, I can't remember exactly the name of the country, but someone wanted to be a candidate, for the elections, the parliament, or any other legislative body. If a person was to become a candidate, they do not have the right, whatever their rank, even if they know the Quran by heart, even if they have a tremendous academic record, they can't be elected if they do not have a recognized diploma. On the contrary, people who have spent their lives to teach the Quran or learn the Quran, they are righteous indeed, but they will not have the possibility or opportunity to contribute to the resolution of national and social problems. And this is what has pushed many people, many young people, indeed, to be attracted by extremist and integrist groups. And that's why these institutions must be urgently reformed. Even those teaching traditional education only, and I pray Allah that He will facilitate our task in order to ensure the momentum of the African continent and to help us find the best solutions for these young people under an academic, scientific standpoint, and also be the actors of peace. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Your Excellency. Now we shall give the floor to the next speaker, Please stick to the time imparted. We give the floor now to Dr. Ibrahim Al-Muqari. He is the Imam from the Abuja Mosque within the Governorate of Nigeria. Praise be the Lord. Peace and prayers upon the Prophet, his family, and his companions. I join the former speakers to express my gratitude to the people in organizing this great peace conference in Africa, especially the founding father of this conference, Sheikh Ibn Baya. My delivery shall echo what has been said by the former speaker, by the previous speaker. It is true that we are trying to provide some positive criticism when we are talking about traditional education and ancient education. In this regard, the role played by traditional education in the nation-state environment is important. This difference between ancient, traditional, and modern education falls under artificial division imposed by the colonial regimes. We have physicians, we have doctors and practitioners coming from al-fiqh and from the jurisprudence. However, when the colonial regimes, when he settled in Africa, started to divide human sciences and religious sciences. Please let remind you that the Muslim society has performed great achievements in the past when there were no division between modern sciences and religious sciences, also called the modern sciences, modern education, till the history of Muslims be violated with the importations of foreign concepts. Quranic schools have seen many ulemas flourishing within their environment, scholars, philosophers, doctors, and other scholars and scientists. That's why we have seen strong and deep changes in our societies. And step by step, the teaching and education of sciences have become less and less important within the Quranic schools. The trainings and the education provided in the traditional Quranic schools sometimes do not match enough with the needs of the job market and the modern society. However, this traditional education bears a lot of assets. It is unanimously thought that within universities, the Islamic studies and religious studies are not capable to contribute to the development of societies. That's a point which is being made in modern academic world. Some may think that people trained in traditional education may not match the needs of a modern environment. There is also a very important God message which is of great help to understand the voice of Allah, because the real knowledge is the one which is coming from his belief and his religion, and this is something that we will find as a motto in this ancient and traditional knowledge. There is also the embracement of principles taught by the Holy Quran regarding the celebration of knowledge and skills by enabling the believers and the students will acquire a good command of Arabic because of studying Arabic and Quran. There is also a lot of tolerance and a great pedagogy which has been taught in Mahadra, in Quranic schools, where teachers, shuyukh and scholars were adapting their education to the different levels of pupils and students. Consequently, traditional education is not very expensive and is much affordable to all the communities, especially the most vulnerable ones. This kind of education is not bonded nor tied with market values. We also need to talk about globalization. The globalization which does not respect the particularities of each communities and each country. The traditional education, which used to be an important part of the Muslim identity, has been eradicated. Let's talk also about the human resources. Students from that kind of education have started to question that kind of education, especially regarding the future outlooks in order to face this ramping globalization. This traditional teaching, when he managed to face all obstacles, we may find that in other countries, like in Western Africa, that kind of teaching, that kind of education could not resist as well as the other countries. There is also other skills and competencies that should be taken into consideration. Traditional education does not fulfill anymore to provide to students and pupils what they need because of the lack of investment in that kind of education. violence, intellectual extremism affecting the Muslim world, whether in the East or in the West, cannot be eradicated unless we invest much more with a lot of interest in that kind of ancient education. This in order to challenge the misinterpretation of the Quranic text and the Hadith, which are often taken as hostages to serve extremism and terrorism. That's why it is utterly urgent to re-give the right place to traditional education in order for it to play its full role to enable the next generations to become facilitators for peace, for coordination, tolerance, and peace based on the religious principles. We then need to reshape and redesign the pedagogic engineering of this traditional education. And we also need to act to help this traditional education to embrace new pedagogic methods and means to help the next students and pupils coming from the traditional education. The job market is also very important, showing fairness, justice in the distribution of financial resources within this traditional education that should be taken into account as full part of the educational system in our societies. Gentlemen, please. We also need to secure financial resources through waqfs and religious dotation through zakat and charities, because there is a lack of investment in this traditional education. We thus need to invest further rather than investing in weapons. So we need to invest in traditional investment and traditional education to preserve peace. Waqfs, donation, charities, philanthropists, private and public sectors, especially the waqfs in Western countries. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much. Dr. Brahim Ahmed. Thank you. Thank you for this wonderful presentation, this wonderful input. I give the floor now to Dr. Arfel Knight. The floor now to Dr. Amena Diallo. She is a researcher within the University of Hassa Conte. You have the floor. In the name of God, the grateful and the merciful, peace be upon the Prophet, his family, and his companions. First and foremost, I would like to thank the Abu Dhabi Forum for Peace and the Islamic Republic of Mauritania for organizing this forum. I would like to express my gratitude, Sheikh Abdallah Ben Baya, who gave me the opportunity to attend this conference among scholars and scientists. I'm going to talk about the role played by traditional education within the nation-state environment. Teachers, professors, previous professors have already elaborated on what I wanted to deliver. That's why I will be as brief as possible, and I will focus on what has not been done yet. Initially, I had an introduction and 3 main pillars. In this introduction, I try to have a retrospective position to understand the ancestral education between past and present. How we moved from a regression in the asset of this traditional education that it used to play in the past. By reading the book of Amadou Amar Bakiti, he spoke about some very important items in this book. The choice of the teacher in the past. The teacher was to be chosen by the community, but now it's not any longer the community. The teacher used to be chosen for his ethic, his morality, his behavior. Now the choice of the teacher is done in a randomized way. Anyone reading Al-Quran could become a teacher. Societies and communities in the past were giving a lot of importance to the teacher's profile because those teachers were responsible of the education of their children. Now, we don't even know the curricula of those teachers. This is what is creating a crisis and gaps within the traditional education. We may see that those teachers in the past were masters, were mastering the Quranic text, and they were even understanding the Quranic interpreting with the meanings and the shades of the Quranic text. Learning is one thing, understanding is something else. Making from the Quranic text a lifestyle is something very important. This is what means by being embraced by the Quranic text. What role has been played by the traditional education? It's a political role, a society role, an education role, a sensitization, an awareness role, and a development role. I would like to shed the light on some of those elements, especially when we want to create men and women able to bear the Islam message. If we only teach repetition, we will never be able to shape the hearts and the personality of the next generations, being able to bear, to put forward the Islam messages. Islam is the peace religion. In its own name, it means peace. Islam, salam. Therefore, the peace dissemination is the natural consequence coming from the Islam principles facing the colonizers, facing the occupation. It is true that colonialism is no longer valid. However, there are new shapes, new ways of neo-colonialism, an intellectual colonialism. Al-Mukhtar al-Sosi, Sheikh Amegnahin, all those names are some very important figures who rejected colonialism, especially the intellectual colonialism. There are also political factors and economic factors which made that schools are now focusing on market purposes, on financial purposes, trying to be only profit institutions. Today, students and pupils don't have access to schools except the monthly fees is paid. Otherwise, they may be thrown away from schools if they don't pay for the monthly fees. Today, the target is about accumulating financial capitals. Well, I'm going to be as brief as possible as per the chairman's request. What could rehabilitate this traditional education? Different solutions have been stated by professors. Now, making sure that there is an integration of this traditional education in other curricula, like the vocational training, because we need craftsmen and women. Why shouldn't we make sure that vocational training being taught in the same time as traditional education? Craftsmen, masters, well trained, in ancient education institutions, believers bearing the Muslim faith. Thank you. It's a wonderful presentation. Thank you for your delivery. Please let me give the floor to Sheikh Abu Bakr Fakhi. He's an expert in the Islamic thinking. He has published many essays, articles in the name of God, the grateful and the merciful. God bless you. It's a very important topic, a very complex topic. Let me tell you that this very important topic is due to the fact that our nation has gone through different stages. The fight against colonialism, the post-colonial events, and the end of traditional education in most of the Islamic states just after the independences. This conference is organized in a very important time. It shows us clearly the way we need to follow to pursue peace and development. We need to find local solutions to local problems. That's why I need to highlight the importance of traditional education. We need to leverage the accumulation of our civilization in the past. We managed to face colonization in a very direct way. In any case, the particularities of this education have been diluted in the education environment, in the modern education environment. Let's shall not forget that people graduating from the Mauritanian Mahadara, when they graduate, when they finish their education, have the feeling of helping the others instead of looking for a stable job to start a stable life. They are trying to accomplish their mission, to fulfill their mission. He doesn't want to take care of his own business, but he would rather be involved in teaching and taking care of the others. The majority is working with no salary, with no wage. Sometimes teachers would take care of students coming from remote areas. Well, we need to change this situation. Many possibilities and capacities are ahead. God said to the angels, God gave all the names to Adam. The Holy Quran has always paired empowerment and knowledge and skills. Human being is human because he owns knowledge to be responsible, to be a father, to be fair in this world. You need to have knowledge. You need knowledge and skills. However, today we have changed this mindset. We are attending schools and universities to graduate and to have a stable job, a good job. Unfortunately, this is not the right approach. In the past, we had to ensure the student to dedicate himself to learning, and it was our traditional education. We have shaped our personalities thanks to this training. We have chosen the way of moderation thanks to this traditional education. We should not sacrifice this traditional education system just to move to another system, educational system. That's why I want to highlight the importance of this traditional education system. Now, about nation state. How did nation state manage traditional education? At home, in Mauritania, state has created an institution being a bridge between traditional education and modern education. It was the first bridge. Then we have created the traditional high school, secondary school. secondary school where Arabic language was taught and Islamic studies were being taught. We have many civil servants, translators, who have attended traditional secondary school. They have studied in Al-Mahadar, then they moved to traditional high school, and they managed to learn French, English, and other languages. It was a bridge towards modern teaching. It was also a bridge toward the job market. Then we have created a traditional university. The access to this kind of education is under an examination. And we have two different categories within this academic institution. We have people graduated with a baccalaureate, and we have others. We have ministers coming from this traditional education institution. We also have a professional training school taking care of students from Mahadar, and they do follow their training in different fields, carpentry, electricity, and so on. There is also a very important project to standardize the content of traditional education and modern education. Traditional education prepares students to understand the overall environment. Sometimes some students were struggling to integrate in other education institutions. However, when the education system is relevant, we can even have experts in the scientific fields. That's why we need to make the best we can do to ensure the success of traditional education. Please let me underline that despite the differences, we need to save the traditional education system. It's a system which has designed our collective mindset. Let's not sacrifice it. We need to proceed to a mix, for instance, fields from the modern education and integrate them in the traditional education system, and the other way around. Islamic studies could be integrated in human sciences or social sciences. Now, we have experts, we have some very technical specialties, technical science. We have the faculty to study Islamic studies. We have the faculty of law, the law school. We need a clear idea upon the people we want to train. People with a sound basis of traditional education, and in the same time, someone integrated in the modern environment. But we cannot eradicate the past and the traditions. We need to maintain this relation between the citizen and the Islamic environment. Let's not sacrifice an education system which has designed our personalities, the personality of Muslim people, our values are part of us. If a system wants to eradicate a nation from its values, it will never succeed. That's why we will have to maintain this traditional education which has enabled us to preserve our values. Is a bunch of technical decisions, but what is most important is to maintain the principle. Family. Why family is so important? Why do we have the family principles which are always here? This is thanks to the traditional education. I would like to thank Sheikh Abdullah Ben Baya for directing the nation to find solutions. We have the solution. We have a solution that we could apply to many fields. Thank you. Thank you very much. And wish you happiness and success. God bless you.
كاملا والتي تناولت بإسهاب التجربة الموريتانية وآفاق التعليم الأصلي.
Thank you for giving us this very interesting presentation. We've talked about the experience of Mauritania, and we have set forth the objectives of the reform of traditional education. Now we are coming to the end of this session, and I would like to pray God to protect the Sheikh bin Abdullah and the guide of the nation. He's a wise man amongst the wise, and he's a peace builder. He is the author of this vision, a humanitarian and humanistic vision. This is the reason why we would like now to commend Sheikh Abdullah, and I think the whole world should thank him for the good he did for the peoples of the world. Thank you again, sir. Thank you. Good afternoon. We're now, if you please ask you not to leave the room, because we are going to welcome the next session.
And
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم
In the name of Allah, the graceful and the merciful, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for joining us for this last session of the day. I am now, ladies and gentlemen, going to launch the fifth session, and this is a panel about traditional education in the context of globalization. So this is why I would like to start by thanking Sheikh Ben Baya, who spared no effort to organize this beautiful conference in Mauritania for 3 days, and for making our stay as pleasant as possible during this month of January. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us now move on to the traditional teachings within the realm of globalization. Traditional schooling systems have enabled to upkeep the Islamic identity of this country and other African countries applying traditional teaching methods. This educational system should be preserved, yet in the context of the scientific development, because it has enabled us to keep our identities, and we should not neglect this traditional educational system, since it has enabled us to produce great scholars who understood the quintessence of the message of Islam. No extremist came out of these wise men. None of the people who have been taught in the traditional system produced extremists. So we find that some people are being targeted in the realm of their own houses, and they are being taught fanatic religion. This is why science is a double-edged sword, because there's a positive side of things, yet there is also a negative side. The Mahdara in our countries have been defending the transmission of knowledge since the Amorabite period, and this has enabled the progression of Islam in the different regions of Africa. Now I'm going to head over on to Dr. Zakaria Abdul Hamid Salim for 7 minutes. I beg your forgiveness. Since I'm going to now give the floor to Abubakar Duki, the president of the League of Ulemas of Burkina Faso, on behalf of God, the most graceful and the most merciful. Ladies and gentlemen, here we come again to this beautiful country that we love all. By the grace of God, who honored us, inviting us throughout the principles of Islam in this beautiful Islamic Republic of Mauritania. This is the only state where there's a 100% of Muslims in the population, and also a country who has always abode by Islam, taught Islam as well in different regions of the African continent throughout traditional teachings, and thanks to the ulamas of the continent and of the Arab Muslim world, in order to enable the African society to coexist in spite of tribal and cultural divergences, and also to protect Africans of any forms of integrism and radicalism, and avoid any forms of disputes or conflicts between Muslim brothers, as well as avoiding to spill the blood of Muslims at large. This is a teaching that sometimes is a victim of hostile velleity stemming from other parties. There are lots of obstacles and challenges we need to overcome in order to ensure the good progression of these teachings. It is not strange to find new wise men who are experts in these kinds of trainings, and I'm talking about His Excellency Sheikh Abdallah Ben Baya, may God assist him, for all the Muslims. He spared no efforts to keep on carrying the strongest messages of this learning in the fields of education, peace, peacekeeping, sustainable development, and all these fields are in continuous deterioration in spite of the tremendous efforts of the modernization of the educational system. And we do not need any arguments to demonstrate that, because it's very clear. This was largely recognized by the leaders of globalization, who said that this traditional teaching has been a victim of many intestine struggles and hostile currents. Traditional education facilitates the understanding of the Quran in order to ensure the array of this religion in the world. One cannot deal with this kind of teaching without learning classic Arabic, and thanks to this educational model, we've trained real ulamas, wise men. They have the deepest knowledge of the religion and knowledge, and they have largely contributed to many academic publications throughout the witnesses of several parties. Many people can bear witness to the success of this endeavor, and many others are trying to ensure the fulfillment of Muslims, yet throughout sometimes unlawful practices. Traditional teachings ally knowledge, science, and also educational values that we want to convey in order to consolidate these principles within individuals trying to accumulate knowledge in these fields. In my 4th year, I failed. Why? Because there were lots of students who contested the words of a professor, and they were trying to contradict him. So he told us, be careful, because after a few months you will have no privileges. And so the question that arises on this point is the following: people who do not respect their sheikh, can they respect other people at large? And for these, traditional education cannot be dissociated from human values, since happiness and good can only be reached within the respect of these universal values. And we need to also abide by the traditional rules reflecting the ethics of Islam, instead of following universal values without taking stock of the peculiarities of traditional education, because millions are being spent in many different sectors, yet without any effects and without any consecration of these human values. This is why there's an urgent need now to ensure technological advances. These should come along with these technological teachings containing solid values in order to ensure a peaceful lifestyle and a future of our citizens. This is why the leaders of our countries and heads of states were expecting to meet Sheikh Ben Baya. Many people want to meet him to find solutions. This is a proof of how promising His Eminence is. He has largely contributed to the circulation of the values owned to traditional learning and avoiding any hostile trends or currents, or trying to avoid any unuseful science to be taught, and also to defend civilizational heritage. All these efforts gave their fruits because these leaders and international organizations paid homage to our scientific heritage. And not only did they try to learn from us, but beyond that, UNESCO, which is responsible for education and culture throughout the world and represents more than 200 countries, is an institution that decided to include the Mauritanian Mahdara as part of the intangible heritage of humankind. And we would like to commend and thank them for that, because the return to reality is a virtue. Our colleagues also made the excellent choice of this topic, traditional education alongside peace. And this is why I would like to seize this opportunity to thank all the organizers, as Sheikh Redouani, for his deepest conviction to convey the very strong message of this conference and his support to any initiative and projects reforming our religion and working to the benefit of our continent. We also would like to say that he honored us by his presidency since the beginning of our works, and he personally has been seeking to the activities of this encounter. May God bless him for that. We also would like to thank the Mauritanian people with all their sensibilities and components. And every time we visit this country, we really feel like they are our brothers and not our hosts. This is why I would like to thank you again for your very warm welcome. And I would like to ask God to preserve these people and ensure their stability in the future. This is why now we are entering a new era, and we hope that we will keep on solid stone steps and avoiding any instability. And I'm saying this on behalf of Burkina Faso, and I would like to convey the message from the Minister of Education of Burkina Faso. We would like to again thank Mauritania, his president and people, for their warmest welcome, and I pray that Allah blesses you all. And I should also would like to thank His Excellency the Minister for having taken part to this conference. And I would like to say that I do appreciate and fully understand the different occupations he's been encompassing. He's been dealing with different aspects and cases of our country, and he has a very wide vision of the world. Thank you again, and peace be upon you. Thank you again, Your Eminence. Dr. Abu Bakr Kore, President of the Ulemas of Burkina Faso. I'd like to thank you also for having respected the time that was given to you. You even finished before time. Now let's move on to Dr. Zakaria Ould Ahmed El-Salam. The floor is yours, sir. At the outset, let me apologize since I'm going to present this document in English because the information that is contained in it have been developed in the realm of a project that I have been elaborating in English, and this is why I would rather switch to English, and I did not have time to translate this intervention into Arabic. And this is the reason why I would like to ask you your kind apologies, and this will be an opportunity for the interpreters to focus for the rest of this afternoon. Thank you.
Not a alim or a judge or a qadi. I'm only a university professor. So what I'm going to say here is really relevant to my current research projects. What that means is that you should not expect from the few words I'm going to say here any real religious insight or important Islamically grounded propositions. I actually suspect that I was invited to say a few words about a research book project I am currently working on. The project is called Global Shanqit, Mauritanian Islamic Scholar on the Global Stage. This project, I think, fits squarely within the topic of this panel. I am, of course, not going to inflict on you a detailed presentation about the project and its research questions, methodologies, and all that kind of stuff that preoccupies scholars like myself. However, I'll try to cover very briefly what the project is about and what I think this research is relevant and why I have learned so far, what I have learned so far, and especially about the case study I'm doing on Mauritania. So the project is, I think, important not because of its scholarly merits, but it's important because it focuses on debunking and criticizing two main myths about Islamic Africa. The first myth is that Islam is not scholarly grounded and not deeply rooted in Africa and history, and that African Muslims didn't contribute to the production of Islamic knowledge globally. So this is the first myth. This myth has been debunked for the last 50 years in the Western academia. So most students now in the United States or Europe learn that there is a deeply rooted tradition of classical Islamic knowledge in places like Borno, Nigeria, Senegal, Ethiopia, northern Mali, pretty much everywhere on the continent. So in all these places, there has been a sophisticated system of traditional knowledge, sometimes for centuries, with concrete evidence such as massive libraries, manuscripts, repositories, and well-trained Islamic scholars virtually from all African countries and in all African countries. So the myth of the absence of knowledge production in Africa has been, I think, carefully and effectively destroyed by academics, modern-day academics, I mean, in the Western academia. But the second myth about Islamic knowledge in Africa as something very remote, very local, not really exported, without really a meaningful global presence, needs still to be criticized and studied. And this is one of the main objectives for my project through my book project, Global Shanqit. Of course, there are many cases in today's world which African Muslim scholars trained in the traditional education system, التعليم العتيق, have been able to have a great impact in the Middle East, at least since the 17th and 18th century. That has been documented by many books and articles. African Muslim scholars continue to have a global presence in Muslim security of knowledge. I can offer the presence, for example, of the Tijaniya, Ibrahimiya, virtually everywhere in the world, including in Europe, North Africa, Asia, and the United States. I can also mention the Jahanke clerics who are, I've noticed, been extremely influential in modern-day Canada, for example, in very diverse Muslim communities. I chose personally to focus on Mauritania for obvious reasons, because I'm Mauritania, but also because of the ease of access to resource for me, etc. But there are also other reasons. Mauritania, I think, has had a great visibility on the global stage recently. I think Sheikh Abdullah bin Baya is the best example of how far traditional education can take you, and how our Mahzara system and the Mahdara-based knowledge prepares you to be the champion on peace and tolerance and fine classical knowledge. And the Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayi, I think, has illustrated that for the last 60 years. However, when they analyze the continued relevance of traditional education in time of globalization, there are two mistakes that are often made by modern-day scholars. The first one is that they think that the presence of our ulama on the global stage is a new phenomenon. They think it's, you will hear them saying or claiming that it's a post-9/11 phenomenon. I even read in a book called Islam is a Country by a scholar of Yale University called Zarina Agrawal. Her argument is that Islamic scholars from Mauritania became only relevant on a global stage only very recently in the post-9/11, where people such as American converts, especially Hamza Yusuf, have contributed to give visibility to scholars, Shanaqita scholars. So this is hardly a new phenomenon. I've been able to dig out resources and archives that shows that the influence of people from the Sahara, from Africa, indeed more broadly, have been felt in central places in the Muslim world, such as the Middle East, of course the Hijaz, but also in other big cities of the Ottoman Empire as early as 18th centuries. For the case of Mauritania, we know many names. One of the people I think is a very interesting illustration is the case of Saleh Al-Fulani, who is really a Pan-African, who was trained in various places on the African continent, including Mauritania, before moving to the Middle East, where he became a key reference in Hadith, for example. So Africa has been exporting on the global stage a very competitive, extremely leading scholars in traditional Islamic knowledge, and this is hardly a new phenomenon as we have been led to believe. Of course, Mauritanians, you might have heard in other communications, a whole full list of Mauritanians who were able to move to the Middle East or the cities of the Ottoman Empire in order to spread traditional Islamic knowledge and even to teach Arabic in the Middle East. We in Mauritania are very familiar with somebody called Ahmed bin Amin al-Shanqiti, who really gave this idea of Bilad Shanqit a concrete illustration through his book Al-Wasit fi Tarajim Udaba Shanqit, which was published back in 1911 in Cairo, which really exposed the rest of the Muslim world to the traditional of poetry and Arabic and Islamic knowledge in Mauritania. Another person that I claim played an even more relevant role is Muhammad Mahmoud At-Tlamid al-Shanqiti, who died in 1904, and who really was very active on multiple theaters in Istanbul, in Mecca, in Medina. He was a literary critic in Egypt. He was able to contribute to the rediscovery of Islamic classic. And I think that this is really the first Shanqiti who became a global reference and really attracted the attention of the other scholars to Mauritania. My time is up. I have 1 minute apparently. So the second mistake is that many people think that only well-known scholars are present on the global stage. During my research, I went to Abu Dhabi, I went to Saudi Arabia, and I came across many people who are really little known, but they have been able to contribute themselves to the reputation of Mauritania as a global center of Islamic knowledge. And some of these people are not even Mauritanians, but they have been trained in Mauritania's Mahadir as late as the 2000, 2005, 2006, sometimes in the 80s and 70s. And those people really are very proud of their authentic training in Mauritanian Mahdara. I speak very fondly of traditional system of knowledge production, which is authentically African. It's neither Arab, neither African, but it's a mix of the two. And I have now to stop because I think my time is up. Thank you very much. I'm sorry again for speaking in English. Bye.
شكرا دكتور زكريا الأحمد سالم على العرض القيم. والآن نحيل الكلمة لصاحب الفضيلة الدكتور محمد يدر أمش.
We are going to hear now from another person.
لا يتجاوز 10 دقائق من فضلكم.
شكرا جزيلا السيد رئيس الجلسة المحترم.
To thank you, dear chair, on behalf of God, the most graceful, the most merciful, be blessings upon his prophet, his companions, and his family. This work that we are achieving all together in order to set the good groundings of our construction for the future is a noble task that deserves full thanks. And this is the reason why I would like, if I may, to express my deepest thanks to any person who has contributed to the organization of this event, both from the academic and scientific realm. And they do shed a light on humankind here and now, bringing us more values of peace, serenity. And I would like to thereby thank His Eminence Sheikh Sid Abdullah bin Bair for his assistance, and may God protect him. We want to serve humankind, our countries, and serve peace throughout the world. To deal with this matter of ancestral school, where traditional teachings and learnings or ancestral education in the framework of globalization reflect the very issue of the intrinsic nature of the Islamic civilization. Anyone who studies history in the deepest of its civilizational roots will find that there are different civilizations that have been arisen by force, by the military force. Other civilizations were elaborated alongside the rivers and water flows. Other civilizations took culture as their forehead, but the Islamic culture was the only one that was built on the grounds of a book, the Holy Book, the Holy Quran. And the reason of being of this Islamic civilization is such as when I'm looking back at this civilization and traditional learning, I understand how it is important that traditional values and teachings be based and grounded on this holy book, the Holy Quran.
All values and knowledges which have been adopted by traditional education are drawn from the Holy Book. Consequently, we notice this tie between Islamic civilizations and traditional education. This is the reason why the Islamic civilization has increased despite all the hinges, obstacles in the globalization environment impacting every one of us. Given the fact that globalization has some particular features, it means that we need to put aside the particularities. Globalization is imposing a standardized logic and tradition regarding consuming and the way we wear. It's something which has been imposed on planet Earth. Consequently, societies have no particularities whatsoever. Traditional education is part of this civilization, should contribute to prevent us from this desire of eradicating our own identity. Consequently, we need to preserve those particularities, those specificities. and then we will be able to face globalization. We will then avoid the drawbacks of globalization by leveraging on the advantages. Sources, knowledge and skills and science, values, ethic, behavior, and regarding everything pushed and managed by this training, traditional education. It's some sort of a weapon. We can consider it as a weapon, or better say, a tool with which we will be able to face globalization, to mitigate the drawbacks of globalization that could represent a threat to our identity. Ancestral education has some features regarding knowledge. It allows knowledge for all citizens. All modern civilizations are talking about democratizations, about knowledge access. And now let me quote a model, a scholar, Sheikh Tlemceni, in Bijaya, Sheikh Tlemceni, in the 8th century Hejira. Among his quotes, he said, quote, I went to Bijaya and I found 150 people who were learning, memorizing Al-Mudawana. Then we had another traveler, Mohsin al-Tlinani. He made many travelings and voyages. He said the same thing. He said that he went to Bijaya and he said that he found 500 young girls who were learning Quran, who were memorizing Quran, meaning that education was open to all the society. In Algeria, in 830, they thought that illiteracy was inexistent following the end of the French colonization. 80% of people were illiterate. Traditional education protects values, protects law. This traditional teaching defends the right of countries. When we had no state, when no nation in Algeria, traditional education replaced the state to face the colonization and to provide resources. I have 1 minute left. Al-Amir Abdelkader is a model. When he fought against the French occupation, and when he was asked, how did you manage to face the Christians? He said, I was fighting against settlers in Bilad el-Sham. I was fighting with these people because I was defending justice. A negative impact of globalization. 2 years ago, a forum in Abu Dhabi on peace called around traditional education that could help any society to protect and to aid the whole humanity to move towards globalization and peace and Islam. I'm done with my input and my delivery. Thank you very much. Thank you, dear professor, dear doctor. Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you for your great delivery. Now we are giving the floor on the Zoom platform to Dr. Rieke. from France, Dr. Rick from France, regarding religious education. We are waiting for the Zoom video conference from France. You have the floor, gentlemen. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. First and foremost, I would like to apologize for not being with you in person. Fortunately, I have this capacity to talk to you digitally. Indeed, deglobalization is a holistic philosophy and not only a technological movement. Globalization of temporality, it's the unification of markets, electronic commerce, added values, the legal revolution, violations of identities. Globalization is as it is. It's a new world order. It's an international system which creates unbalanced societies where survival is the most important thing, and the most vulnerable do suffer from a cultural and intellectual subordination. During the postmodern era and following this ramping globalization, the humanity, mankind, is not capable any longer to impose its rules. Postmodernity and globalizations are claiming their cultural models, creating thus some sort of betrayal, making human being a fake image of himself. Now, regarding the values on societies and on individuals, where can we now find some signs of hope? The global unity through consuming societies which are all over the world. While we see that traditional education is trying to educate, to teach religion through principles, its morality and its ethic to become a behavior practice in the private and in the public environment. Cultural and economic factors. Now, as far as the political challenges, the globalization has imposed to Arabic and African civilization some very important challenges, especially following the 9/11 in New York, creating some deep changes in the vision of the Western world, which ask for rational policies to face all the obstacles. Among the political challenges, we're going to see this attempt to intervene and to interfere in the southern societies. This globalization has also imposed the intervention of the most developed and the most powerful countries. within the most vulnerable countries by using many pretexts to try to legitimate those interventions with laws and legislation which are trying to impose the vision of those advanced societies and powerful societies. Most of the time, this legal framework is done in a prohibition environment and with some restrictive environment. By banning those donations to countries which will resist to globalization. Now, as far the cultural challenges imposed by this globalization, voices coming from the Arabic and Muslim world, trying to guarantee a separation between public life and religion, especially when we're talking about education and teaching, at a time when we see that religious education and the academic education should be based on a separation between the religious environment and the non-religious environment. Many cultural challenges do exist. Religious education has to face the globalization culture, which is an oral culture with values disseminated through satellite channels and through modus operandi around what is drunk, seen, consumed on screens. There are different mechanisms with which the religious education could face those cultural challenges, starting by the school curricula, academic curricula, through the need to isolate them and to extract the political conflicts and the radicalist attempts. This education given to the young generation should be in line with the requirements of our modern era to guarantee the sustainability of the genuinity of our environment. Next, trying to safeguard the financial autonomy of this traditional education for the ancestral education not to be used to serve the political agenda and to avoid to weaponize this ancestral education, empowering women and giving a particular attention on their development by empowering them to play their full socio-economic role. 5, last and not least, giving a particular importance to the foreign languages education, with which we could organize some skill transfer by ensuring a cohabitation of peace between the different cultures. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor George. Thank you for sticking to the time given. His Excellency Professor Aïssi Manti, Honorable former Minister of Digital Economy from Nigeria. Honorable Minister, you have the floor. In the name of God, the grateful and the merciful, Assalamu alaikum. God bless you all. Peace be upon you. Praise be the Lord, the Almighty. Peace and prayers upon the Prophet, his family, and his companion. Peace be upon the Prophet, his family, and his companions. Dear scholars, dear scientists, dear experts, dear attendees, Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. God's will, we are gathered here on this holy land, the Islamic Republic of Mauritania, in its capital, Nouakchott, welcoming this wonderful conference and the 4th edition under the high patronage of Mohammed Razani. May God assist him. We would like to express our deepest gratitude to the founding father of this conference, His Excellency Sheikh Rouna Abdallah Ben Baya, President of the African Conference for Peace and President of the Abu Dhabi Forum for Peace. Thank you, Your Excellencies. Thank you for organizing this meeting and for inviting us by selecting very carefully the title of this 4th edition. We beg the Lord to give its full value to His Excellency, President of the Islamic Republic of Mauritania, and Sheikh Ben Abdallah. The quest for knowledge is a duty for Muslims. The quest for knowledge conveys many assets, as it is quoted in many Quranic verses in different surahs, Surat al-Kafir, like Surat al-Kafir, Surat al-Taha, in verses 114, and in other surats. Like Surat of Imran family, verses 118. Taking into account the content of those verses, the traditional education in Africa has maintained for many centuries. I myself graduated from the ancestral education, which helped me to learn Quran, to learn Arabic, and to understand the content of many books of al-fiqh and books about al-sharia. This conference is very important because I would like to discuss the challenges and the opportunities of ancestral education during the globalization. Because of the globalization, the world has become as small as a village, or maybe an apartment, or maybe a room, a living room, where trends, movements, mindsets are mixed. A globalization which has conveyed many benefits. Dear brothers, ancestral education has different patterns in the African continent. Through this conference, I had the opportunity to realize that there are many differences between the ancestral education and what prevails in Eastern Africa versus what is going on in Western Africa. Eastern against Western Africa. What about Southern Africa compared to Northern Africa. Let's come back to Nigeria. We can say that ancestral education is divided in two parts. First and foremost, everything related to Quran learning, Quran writing, learnings of Islamic values for the small and for the others. It's a tradition which is called Handum Agalo. This tradition has been perpetrated for years and centuries. More than 100,000 in the countries like Nigeria with millions of followers, students start to learn Arabic. Then they learn Quranic verses, the smallest surahs, the speaker is using the Nigerian alphabet to give the listeners the way Quran and the fundamentals of the Quranic language is being taught in the Nigerian environment. We also have a teaching about fiqh, about grammar, what we call karatun twanzi in Nigerian dialect. Opportunities provided by this traditional education are four. Then I will address the challenges regarding this traditional education during the globalization, and then the need expressed by that kind of education, to which we need to give a special response to maintain its sustainability. First and foremost, it's an education about memorizing. It's an education educating, teaching moral, ethics, values, principles. This education is about resilience, endurance, patience, relevance, vocational training with workshops, carpentry workshops, trade activities, to have the followers being able to be involved in value-creating activities. Among the challenges, we have the lack of use of modern technologies. It is very difficult to found computers in ancestral education schools. In most of the schools, there is not even electricity, no certificate, there is no graduation. Followers will end their curricula and would not get a certificate nor a graduation. It's a huge concern we have to face. Even if the followers want to become teachers in public schools, they would not be entitled to do so because they have no certificate whatsoever. In many African countries, especially in the north of Africa, there is a very tricky environment where followers are coming from very vulnerable communities. This ancestral and traditional education is not considered as a formal education. Quran reading is done without without rules, formal rules, to talk about Quran. There is a very important need, especially in the Western Africa countries, to be involved in the rehabilitation of formal education and to implement programs to fight against poverty and precarity, to make sure that this training should be reshaped and redesigned, especially in the different institutions, to provide some certificates and diplomas to better support and to better empower the followers by giving them some grants and scholarships, what is the case for public schools. This is the wrap-up of my statement. Thank you. God bless you. Praise be the Lord. Thank you, Professor Isa Ali, Your Excellency from Nigeria. You are 1.5 minutes ahead. Now, Dr. Hamed from Senegal. 10 minutes, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. It's a great honor, it's a pleasure for me to participate for the first time to that conference dedicated to peace gathering. Very important topics like Islamic education.
Chaleureusement les organisateurs.
I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to this gathering.
Cette éducation.
I would like to talk about education and focusing on the transformation of digitalization in Sahel. It's a thinking that I am performing through a project implemented recently in our university in collaboration with different higher education institutions coming from Sahelian countries. Some general overview, if you allow me, because I would like to share with you the path which has led us to organize this research. First, to tell you that African states and their international partners are putting forward most of the time the progresses in terms of schooling on the continent. For instance, the raw rate of schooling is an indicator for experts in the field of education regarding the rate of school enrolling. The raw rate in primary school is more than 80%. It is 50% as an average. This is the way the organization is designed, coming from the colonizations, and 34% for secondary education, according to UNESCO figures. Statistics available will help us to point out different challenges we have to face. For instance, 97 million children, 97.5 million teenagers and young youth are considered as being out of school droppers. However, this is the most interesting part of my input, especially for the planners and the decision takers. Part of the children's dropping out or attending other types of education. As a matter of example, in Senegal, 1/3 of the 47% of children dropping out from school are attending to Arabic and Muslim education institutions. It is not up to you, Your Excellency scholars, that I will say that another education offer is available, not visible, unknown, and out of the state-run institutions. The research we have conducted is an important input to understanding this offer and what's the meaning of this offer and what does it imply for states and societies in Sahel. I am an expert in the education field. I'm not an expert in Islam. Why did I get to address this challenge of the Arabic and Muslim challenge? In Bordeaux in 2015, I attended a forum about education and governance in African countries. During this gathering, scholars and scientists, I was struck by the fact that we talk about schools during 72 hours and we never addressed the issue of the Arabo-Islamic education. And I realized that we missed something. My bias is to open social studies on Islam and education in general, in a way to give its dignity to the topic as a research matter, because the Arabic Islamic education is a very important option. I'm not going to come back on some important methodologic aspects. However, I would like to share with you some findings. Those findings may help to think about the renewal we want to give to that kind of education. First and foremost, it's a present education deeply enrooted in the communities. But one of the most important findings, an offer was developed in the higher education with new generations of universities, Islamic universities. Another point that we should take into consideration, this Arabic and Muslim education is touching all the different segments of this society. Even some categories, like we found out that in some institutions, in some Arabic and Muslim education institutions, women were the majority. It's the case of the French and Arabic schools in Niger and some institutions in Chad. The challenge now for the states, how to conduct. Your time is over. As a matter of conclusion, I want to tell you that the Arabic and Muslim education is a very important point that we should take into consideration for the governments in our area. Secondly, we cannot reform our education system without involving thoroughly the stakeholders of the education environment. They have their word to say. And we shall not forget that They are also experts and scholars on those issues. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hamid. I think Dr. Abdallah is back. Welcome. I think the floor is yours now.
Voilà. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
Do not leave us and do not fret. I shall not overpass my imparted time. The subject of my communication is traditional teaching as a driver of peace and the promotion of hospitality traditions. I am starting by an observation a bit everywhere in Africa. Let's open our eyes. There's an uprising of extremist and hateful speeches as well as terrorist practices. So far, traditional African societies were grounded on a set of balanced rules, amongst which religious knowledge, and the Talibids were parcels of the witnesses of the knowledge of the organizations of the baptisms, of the marriages, of the religious ceremonies, and of heritage by a peaceful Islam. What happened to our societies? If we talk about peace nowadays, it's because this balance was broken. And what is the hypothesis of my school is to say before that room that the shortage of free Republican social services leads to the promotion of NGOs, of Islamic obedience, funding some schools. If the school does not take care of the citizens, does not provide jobs, doesn't clean the streets, the state is not doing anything versus an offer from poor countries, the Islamic ideas. Hamas won, Mohammed Morsi won in Egypt. People have to come out of their religious bubble and look at reality in the eye. Because there are social inequalities and because we couldn't find any answers to that, the religious speech is now offering certain answers going in the framework of extreme violence. This is a window that I'd like to open, saying that what is most important in the level of my center is to do the action of the somatization of the thought of the honorable and erudite Sheikh Albi, who tried to transform the Islam into a window of peace, whatever the players at stake. It is very easy to say that Islam is a peaceful religion, is a religion of dialogue, but we forget that within our societies there are lots of inequalities that are now in the point of rupture, and they create problems. Why are we afraid of Islamist parties nowadays? If we play the democratic game, they win, because populations have developed a social service. What is their drama? Every time they win the elections, they are going to arm the themselves, and they're going to leave aside the democratic debates. If we keep on the hadith, we will see 10 years pass by, nothing will move forward. If they review the constitution, the young people coming out of the universities are selling credit cards. But if they find someone telling them, we are going to give you 1,200 euros, you're going to watch the movements of the army and we will pay you, he will go into the religious speech. And there is one thing I want to say, and I will conclude by that. I do not want to vex the greatest scholars and teachers, but people in Africa, when they speak, they are not like Sheikh Al-Bayd. They have no credit or impact in their speech because of their proximity and their legitimation of the powers in place. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Abdallah Musa, for finishing before your time. All in all, we want to thank all our guests. This session is now concluded. Thank you very much for your attention.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. نرجو من الجميع التزام الأماكن.
Thank you very much. Thanks for staying in the room because we have another pending session coming up.
إذا رئيس تفضل. هذا تفضل. تفضل ايه. الرقيب رئيس صراحة اهلا. تفضل شيخ كيف حالك بس؟ ان شاء الله. اوكي يلا.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
In the name of Allah, the most graceful and merciful. May the peace of Allah be upon his Prophet, his companions and followers. First of all, I would like to say that I'd like to thank Sheikh Ben Baya. I'd like to thank this person for all of his efforts deployed in the organization of this magnificent conference. We have the immense honor to host now Sheikh Abdullah Ben Baya. He gathers knowledge, know-how, and he represents a school, a whole moderation school, a school of moderate Islam. This sixth session or panel now is going to deal with traditional education, complementarity, and cooperation. We will have 5 interventions during this panel, and amongst us, we are welcoming experts and university professors and principals who are gathered to find solutions of the intersection point between the traditional educational system and the modern educational system. The objective being to find a model enabling us to struggle against extremism. We shall now see how the educational system shall be inspired from the experience of modern education. This is why I would like to invite you to start with, I'm going to give the floor to the Council, to His Excellency the President of the Republic of Chad. Thank you very much. In the name of Allah, the most graceful and merciful, let me thank you on behalf of the Chadian delegation, Mauritania, the Mauritanian government and people. We would like to greet His Excellency, the President Sheikh Mohammed Al Ghazwani, for his generosity. And I should further like to extend my deepest thanks towards the Sheikh Abdallah bin Baya. May God preserve him and protect him. Thank you again for your kind invitation and for the tremendous efforts you deployed for peace to thrive around the world and for everyone to live in peace, without, of course, forgetting those who work under the directives of Sheikh Ben Baya for the good organization of the 4th edition of this beautiful peace conference. We would like to warmly thank you and thank the public. The importance of this encounter resides in the fact that we are dealing with a very important subject matter. The matter of knowledge and peace is a very touchy question, yet the modernization of traditional learning integrated in society has nowadays become a need. And also the contributions presented by the Quranic schools and traditional teaching schools, even the Khalawis, are real institutions and establishment to propagate the culture of Islam and the Arabic world since the creation and foundation of Islam, since the Mamalik. Let's move on now to the colonization era. In particular, Chad is a sub-Saharan country who has dedicated lots of importance to these educational circles and the houses and establishments propagating Islamic laws and sciences. These teaching circles and halawis, since the Mamluks, we know that we have the Kalim kingdom up to the date. We've been teaching throughout these circles the different corpuses and all genres of grammatical studies and legal studies. In these educational circles, in the Kharawis, we give birth to many wise men bearing the torch of culture, reconciliation, and good understanding of the society in order to preserve its peaceful nature. We preserve also the Islamic culture. Chad is a country with 1 million people who know the Quran by heart, and this could not be possible without the support of the government, ahead of which presidents of different countries such as Nietnu can promote traditional learning. We also are the witnesses of creation by presidential order of a fundamental initiative in order to integrate the Khalawi graduates in society. This integration of the Khalawi aims to acquit them of their obligations versus society. We would like to again thank you for your kind hospitality, and I'd like to convey the salutations of His Excellency Driss Devia, his brother, President of Mauritania, as well as on his behalf, Mohamed Idriss Deby. And we would like to convey his congratulations for the award that was granted to his brother. We would like to thank you again, and may God protect Africa. Peace be upon you. We would also like to thank this professor for his very interesting words. And we will mention that the time that's been given for each presentation is only going to be 5 minutes. We are running out of time. Yet we also have full latitude to choose the language of presentation of your intervention because we have an interpretation service at our disposal. We will start now with the presence of Dr. Abdelatif Bouazizi from the Tunisian Republic. He's a very famous professor, the president of the Zaytuna University and former director of the Civilizational Islam Civilization Center. He has lots of works he wrote about the Islamic civilization, and he's a emblematic figure and a very well-known Islamic thinker. The microphone, please. Now, I agree to act in the like of the pathway traced by God. Yet, of course, should I be pushed by my voluntarist momentum, my pathway is all traced on the left and the right. If I'm surrounded by people of high quality, there are three remarks that I'd like to share with you before I give you a remark about that. The first point is the thanks that I'd like to convey to the organizers of this conference, the Abu Dhabi Forum on Peace and the Tunisian Republic, because when we say Tunisia, it's of course Mauritania as well, and vice versa. These are two parties that are part and parcel of the same body. We are one body and one soul, and we are in perfect symbiosis. Second observation or remark. Dear Deputy of, there was someone that suggested my name. I didn't put myself forward. His Excellency Dr. Khalil presented me as the oldest of them all. But before I start my presentation, I would like to praise God, the Almighty, for giving me the possibility to give you this presentation, because people are already exhausted and we are no longer focused. If there are some shortages and things that I maybe say in the wrong way, I beg you for your apologies. My presentation is called Zaytuna. It's a universal university. The universal passage to university, which is a multifaceted question with lots of overlappings of the different components of such. And sometimes it's hard to make the difference between different things. Zaytuna is a beacon of light, and to quote the Quran, I would like to say that the olive tree symbolizes the illumination, the light shedding, but we should also say that the olive tree is our companion. And according to this configuration that we call Tunisia, Tunis, because there is an aspect of company. This university was created in 1970, in the 79th year of Hijra, and the Mufti yesterday mentioned the genesis of the creation of the Zaytuna University. And I'd like to say that the founders of the university were disciples of to Omar ibn Abdelaziz. The creation of Zaytuna started with a triangle serving Islam. There was a Zaytuna and its members, and amongst the pillars of Zaytuna, this triangle defended the pillars of Islam and preserved it. And they conveyed the values of Islam. We've got Al-Azhar. After Zaytuna, 240 years after its creation, and Jawhar Saqali founded this establishment. And throughout the mosque, lots of mujahids gained many victories and triumphed, and we could mention the Battle of Aid al-Jud, where the Muslims won against the Jews, and we also had some crusades in the Islamic Western world in Fez, There is the Al-Qarawiyyin University. That's how our triangle was formed in 1945, 130 years after the creation of Zaytuna, which was a university created by Fatima Feria, a noble and very saint woman, and she left her imprint in history. The university has allied the prosternation practice and scientific practice. And amongst these, there is tolerance, and this is grounded on several points. This is very clear, and it goes through the dialogue between religions. 3 religions coexisted without any problems, tensions, or dissensions. And this is a clear alliance allying 2 rights, the Alif al-Wami and the Abi Malik right. Tunisia used to associate these rights at the time, and this demonstrates the aspect of tolerance. And this university was a room, a space for freedom, and this was against any rigid principles. Several wise men left traces and works behind themselves. The Book of Noah, Freedom, Abdelaziz Sadi, who wanted to uphold this peculiarity, Sheikh Ibn Ashur, who said that the development of knowledge and methodologies of curricula is extremely important to ensure reforms. And amongst other Zaytuna peculiarities, its modernity. It could support the development of Islam throughout its wise men, and they have made lots of revisions and deployed efforts to reform, namely this university, when it welcomed a group of scholars. We can call them al-Ashur. And Nyafer also, with other groups, contributed to the momentum and the influence of the Zaytuna. Sheikh El Mahmoud is one of the members of the groups who left their imprint, as well as the Zaytuna University. They were a space for struggles. These people would study, and they had a leading leadership role in order to face occupation. They left their impact. And finally, I'd like to say that Zaytuna went ahead of any social and political reforms, and its influence reached all corners of the world. Even Mauritania precisely was enlightened by this knowledge. And now people quote works that stemmed from Zaytuna. Lots of investigations, research, and people who've studied at Zaytuna now find easy answers to any important questions of that nature. Zaytuna now is a reference and a destination for knowledge and for learning, and they have become the axis and the building block of many African countries. Zaytuna is also equipped with its own mosque. After that, we became a university in 1956 up till 1916. The link was broken. And there is a link between learning and the cult. It became a specialized university, and we always have this university that has become a space for education and culture. The principle now overviews 5 institutions endeavoring into Islamic law, as well as the Higher Institute for Quranic Reading. And I'd like to, in fine, say that the final objective of Zaytuna is to give academic distinguished research projects whilst integrating new momentums for networking and connections with other academies in order to invest into the differentiation, diversity, and exchange expertise in order to reduce the difficulties that some researchers come across in all aspects of the acquisition of knowledge. And it sheds a light on the Islamic civilization and procures a pathway far away from radicalization and integrism, and this is to uphold the values of Islam and promote the good middle ground, whilst demonstrating that the Islamic civilization may contribute to development and consolidate human aspects. All this stems from the will of their sons and leaders, the 4 legal institutions welcoming all the sons of the Muslims. And several countries send their students to study in this university. And ultimately, some Asian countries also joined this institution throughout Thailand, Turkey, Indonesia, etc. There are several rights and convictions. Zaytuna is erected as a compass and as a beacon to promote a middle ground Islam and to reestablish relationships with the other and not discard standpoints of others, diverging standpoints. This is the message conveyed by Zaytuna. It's a message of open-mindedness. It's not a matter of East against the West. It's a universal university serving the interests of everyone, all Muslims who want to go far and wide in their Islamic studies. And thank you for your attention. May the peace be upon you. The reference was excellent. Thank you for your presentations, Abdelatif Bouzizi. We have Doctor from Senegal now, and he's a university teacher and doctor in Islamic studies. There is the modern Islamic thinking, and he is also active in Senegal. The floor is yours.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين.
In the name of God, the grateful and the merciful, praise be the Lord, peace be upon the Prophet, his family, and his companions. Assalamu alaikum. I think that His Excellency, the moderator, will be nice to me as he was with Sheikh Abdelatif. First and foremost, I would like to convey a message of congratulation and gratitude to Sheikh Abdallah Ben Baya for inviting us to take place to attend this 4th edition of the African Conference for Peace under the high patronage His Excellency Mohammed Ould-Sheikh Ouazzani, President of the Islamic Republic of Mauritania. I would like to express my gratitude to the Moroccan people and all the organizers. This conference is a flagship encounter given the importance of the items and the topics it covers, especially the topic of traditional education, knowledge, skills, and peace. This event is studied by different Islamic societies to get out of violence and crisis. Teaching education is a major pillar to consolidate peace and stability among peoples. Muslims in Africa have known a traditional system paired with ancestral institutions which have contributed to strengthen the African identity and the Islamic identity in Africa, serving as a space for exchange in Africa. Circumstances with which are going through the African continent are at a crossroads in terms of challenges, and we need to be prepared to address those challenges. Sheikh Ahmed Hatim Atuba had an experience to upgrade and update the traditional education. Between traditional education and modern education, and to disseminate tolerance and modernity. I would like to share with you my experience, and I would like to comment upon some challenges, ongoing challenges, taking into consideration the very limited time I have. I'm going to tell you something about the context and the environment of this experience, but I may limit myself to the University Sheikh Abdel Khatim, the experience of my university founded in 2018 following the initiatives of Al Khalifa Mbaki Muntaqim Baqi, God bless him, in the environment of a Quranic institution encompassing a traditional institution for education, 4 faculties, one for human sciences, one for agriculture, technology, and medicine, and another institute for traduction and vocational training. The philosophy behind this project is to have an overview and to understand what Tariq al-Muludiya is all about, to have practitioner trainings and religious education. It is very important to discipline students and to fight against illiteracy and, indeed, to increase the ethic of students. It was a very important part of this education patrimony in the region and in the area, and especially in Morocco. Different ulemas, scholars, educators graduated from this institution and contributed to root this traditional education, representing a bridge between modern education and traditional education, trying to consolidate the authenticity of this education by adapting it to the new developments, by leveraging the modern technologies and new education methods. Among the very important points, we have the administration, which has been reformed. I may focus my input on 3 points. Methodology, how to modernize. It was about preparing a curricula that would be the referentials of the pedagogical curricula. It was about some general views and general goals to identify the need of students in terms of knowledge, and also the content of this education system. It does involve sciences, human sciences, law, jurisprudence, well known in the traditional education and others. The methodology to teach science, languages, human sciences. So first was the diagnosis, and then the follow-up among the stakeholders. There is a very important part given to the adaptation of traditional education to ensure the horizontal and vertical complementarity between the different fields of education. Same, to give knowledge and skills to students about medicine, agriculture, vocational training. How did we manage to get this education system? It was about education systems where different study levels were mixed. Each one of them were able to follow this curricula at their own pace. We onboarded the traditional education. Each stage is awarded, for each stages, students gained a graduation and a certificate with a final exam. Students have also some fair and ground knowledge and training regarding the digitalization, digital tools, online education. And for the traditional education, we have integrated the remote learning by using a digital platform to handle data about students and exams. Following those evolutions, a particular care is given to spiritual education coming from dhikr circles, circle of dhikrs from Quran and Hadith. We are also holding sessions about students training on religious speeches. Those are some dimensions of the traditional teaching in this university. It is about preserving the values, which is a very important condition for traditional education. By adapting this to the modern education system to integrate students in other specialties, talking about science and others. I would like to express my gratitude to His Excellency Sheikh Ibn Baya on behalf of the University Ahmed Al-Khadim for the training, and on behalf of Sheikh Si Abdurrahman, who is covering the traditional education from Toba. And Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Dr. Sama Abdurrahman, for your great delivery, your great input. Now we are moving to the third speaker, Mohammed Amin. Dr. Mohammed Amin from Nigeria is a researcher, an academic, a president of University of Nigeria. You have the floor, gentlemen. In the name of God, the grateful and the merciful. Peace be upon the Prophet, his companion, his family. Apparently, we are running short of time. We don't have enough time to deep dive in my delivery. I'm going to move directly to the findings of my research and the recommendations, because this is the most important part of my research. I have many suggestions, given the fact that we are talking about points which have already been commented. I will focus on the findings and recommendations. I would like to express my gratitude to Sheikh and the Mauritanian government and the people from Mauritania, the organizers. And I would like to thank Nigeria and wishing this country to get out of this terrible crisis it's going through now. My research is about a preliminary and two principal axes. Introduction is about traditional education in Western Africa, roots and extension, It's a title. Then agreement for a balanced view and how to put an end to radicalization. Probably you will find those points in my research. Second part is about the symbiosis between traditional education, the capacities, the obstacles, and the resources. Please allow me to say that this research could be exploited as an academic document, academic paper, or better said, as a framework being used as a roadmap to build bridges between different fields of education, fields of expertise. At the end of the day, we're talking about suggestions and recommendations. Please allow me to read the findings of my research. Traditional teaching in Africa and in Western Africa. Following the surge of Islam, first century of Hijra, Islam has remained deeply rooted in all the countries in the area. Second, traditional education in Africa, in Western Africa, is the only system for education based on classic Arabic calligraphy from Maghreb. It has changed the education. That type of education is led in different environments. Buyut ulema homes. They have their own means and resources for teaching. They have associated this education resource with the certification of Ijaza. Still, the traditional education and modern education have common points, qualifying them to promote the fair middle and to face radicalism and extremism. These common bridge are common values to foster the good among citizens. Those crossroads, those common points, are a major strength to unroot any kind of radicalism and integrism. In addition to this, it's a light pushing many efforts of research ahead. Sixth point, there are common ground between traditional and modern education, but there are also some differences in each effort to create the intercomplementarity between both fields of expertise to capitalize on the strongest point and to face integrism. This traditional education is focusing on the identity. On the other side, other aspects do rely on personality building to facilitate the integration in the society. Those are missing in traditional education. This is made to fight against extremism and integrism and to close the gap between both systems. We need to leverage the traditional education. However, both systems have enough resources to ease the complementarity and the cooperation between them and to leverage the positive technological development by preserving the fixed values highlighting the identity of the nation. Both education systems have to face challenges and obstacles which have been mentioned in this premise. In my paper, some are the one related to the Islamic society in Western Africa. We need to go beyond those obstacles To go beyond those obstacles, we need to identify them to create the intercomplementarity, or better said, the homogeneity. Both educational systems are built on principle of symbiosis. We should always take into consideration those principles which are putting forward the finding rate of this symbiosis through the use of technology and enough technological resources to eradicate any kind of radicalism. The complementarity between both education systems, the traditional one and the modern one, cannot be achieved only if we take into consideration the advice from and recommendations following the findings of this research. We need to create an institution that will bring together both education systems, modern one and traditional one, to give directions to both education systems to ensure the symbiosis and the homogeneity. They should conduct some field survey and field investigation in the area to give a legal framework to this education system by safeguarding the preservation of its values, and by involving in the traditional education and modern education topics and items that would prevent the followers from the speech of radicalism, and should help the Western Africa to draw the consequences, like Mauritania, Algeria, Tunisia, and Morocco, to draw the consequences of this process. Different experiences are very similar to what we have in this modernization experience. We urge the preparation of a document for the World Congress for Peace that will be the roadmap and the framework in both fields of expertise, taking into consideration the common values of Ummah and the modernity dimension of technology. Suggestions at the end of my paper: the nature of this research, directing researchers in research centers and academic centers toward the design of survey and design to leverage the traditional education in order to fight against violence. The researcher is suggesting to create an academic and scientific review publishing documents and papers on both education systems to serve the cause of the fair middle and to serve as an obstacle to integrism. And the last recommendation, urging the Arabic countries to create a special fund to support the traditional education and the modern education in Western Africa, asking for the fair middle and to build a strategy against radicalism with some resources. Mr. Chair, if I have enough time, can I continue? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mohamed Amin. Now we have the last intervention. Professor from the University Mohammed V, Dr. Basha, is the president of the University Mohammed V. He's a researcher, he's an academic. He has a huge experience, huge and long experience in research. You have the floor, Mr. Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, to express my satisfaction of being here with you in this much beloved country, this country of peace, this country of Islam, moving forward towards a great future under the patronage of His Excellency, Mr. President of the Islamic Republic of Mauritania. Please allow me to express my gratitude to the organizers. I would like to thank Sheikh Ben Beya, a man of great values and humanity, making peace and peace values an objective over his life. He has always fought to see peace prevailing in all countries of the world. Despite his efforts, despite all the efforts put on the table, our continents have to face many challenges. More than 1 million children are not attending schools. According to the forecasts from the United Nations, inhabitants from the African continent will reach 2.5 billion inhabitants in 2050. In other words, more than 25% of the global inhabitants will be Africans. Africa will account for more than 40% of inhabitants of this world by the end of this century. We need to seize the opportunity. We need to seize the opportunity given by the human resources, this human capital. Africa is the future. Africa does represent the future. It is high time, ladies and gentlemen, to embrace, to encompass the African resources. I'm talking about natural resources, intangible resources. Education should be at the core of the cooperation between Africans. Our continent has a lot of capacities, a lot of resources. This continent will then be able to defend the dignity of its fellow citizens. Some partners have elaborated on the importance of traditional education. Traditional education has enabled to mitigate the crisis of modern education. Many approaches to reform traditional education. It's an education system lasting for life, relying on spiritual concepts. Modern universities are trying to take this into consideration. I would like to say that the Moroccan experience is a pilot experience. Because traditional education is under the patronage of the Ministry of Islamic Affairs. It is being covered and supervised by the state. If we want traditional education to play its full role, we need to deal with religion as a light, as a mix of knowledge and skills, and to fight against extremism, we need to opt for knowledge and skills. It's the vision of His Majesty the King in the framework of a multidimensional approach to handle the religious environment. Ladies and gentlemen, following the intervention of Dr. Farid El-Basha, we are now reaching the end of our session. The traditional education system, we do agree that we should develop the traditional education system for it to play its role. Thank you very much for your attention and see you tomorrow.
السلام عليكم. عليكم السلام. اهلا مرحبا. بارك الله فيك. الله يبارك فيك.
اكيد ان شاء الله. كويس ان شاء الله كعادتكم عيد دايم. رئيس انا النص التاسع انا حبدات انا فريد باشا.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. ضيوفنا الكرام أطلنا عليكم.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for bearing with us tomorrow. Please attend the conference quite early. Please be here tomorrow early, on time. We wish to start at 9 a.m. 9 a.m. Thank you for sticking to the time. Thank you for bearing with us. Thank you.
انا نقول ايش كلمه طيبه، انتم طيبين تقدروا المعلومات.